David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, underlying the issues that we are discussing today are the issues of basic rights and basic principles, and that's the right for New Zealanders to live securely, to the right of life, the right to be able to prosper. And those are protected by our security services, our police force, and obviously our intelligence services as well. On the other side, there's the balance that we also expect, which is our human right to have the right of privacy, to have our human rights respected in terms of not being, for example, listened to, or our right to be able to confer with others secretly as well, interfered with as well. And that's the balance we're trying to establish. So we're living in challenging times at the moment. We have seen right across the world an increase in the amount of terrorism that is focused basically on innocent civilians for political purposes and political and religious purposes, mainly stemming out of the Middle East region. I don't want to talk those up too much. When you look at the threat that they pose versus what we faced during the 1960s and 1950s during the Cold War, we're talking about very small numbers versus the possibility of human extinction. But nevertheless, they are still conflicts that we are seeing impinging on our right and our right to life. And for those reasons, we need to have good, solid expertise within our intelligence services to ensure that we are well protected. At the same time, we cannot just rely on our intelligence services to rectify the possible threats that are coming from within our society. It is also about reaching out to those very communities from which some of the threats might come from. And we have not, in my view, adequately enough. We've talked about in a sense, the security, which often tends to be the bottom of the cliff response and not the other. And we need to take much more care in dealing with the issues that underlie some of the grievance that might lead to terrorist activities occurring here in New Zealand. So 2 years ago, the Labour Party announced that we should have a review of our intelligence services. That was largely ignored by the government. They wanted to push through changes to the GCSB legislation. They were prepared to do that without cross-party support. They were only going to do that with the barest majorities of one member of this House, and which they did, and they went and did that. Now, 2 years later, I would say that 2 years has been wasted, because we could have had that review done and dusted, and I remember talking to the Prime Minister and suggesting that the review be done over the course of the election. So whoever was in power after the election would actually be able to pick up that review and put the recommendations in place. That didn't happen, and now we're facing the situation where, a long way further down the track, we are looking at a review of our intelligence services, and I welcome that. But I think there are a couple of other things that we insisted on as part of that review that I would hope that the government will take up. One is that the terms of reference of that review be shared right across the entire House. We should all have confidence that that review is going to be a thorough and robust one, and that we have a say in the terms of reference. Secondly, that we have a look at the people who are going to be conducting that review to ensure that they are of the highest calibre, and again have the confidence of not only this House but of New Zealand as a greater whole. So my firm recommendation is that before this terms of reference is completed and handed to any of us as a fait accompli, that those two things are seen to. So last year we had a very interesting exercise with regard to the way that we dealt with some terrorists, amending some legislation designed to combat a terrorist threat. And we went into into a select committee, a truncated select committee process that none of us was very happy about, but nevertheless we worked very hard collegially in the Foreign Affairs and Select Committee to make sure that we had the best possible outcome from that we could possibly achieve. We did do that. It was a robust process. It was much too short. We've talked about that at length. But we had a wide range of people coming into that committee, speaking openly, in public, reported by the media, with the exception of some of the proceedings that we heard from the SIS, and that was for very good reason. And I think, sir, that this serves to act as a model for what we can expect in the future. Andrew Little talked about this in his speech. I believe that we should not send this review to the Intelligence and Security Committee. It actually should be sent to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, because I believe that it is open. It's frankly, it's got less logistical problems about hearing evidence about the composition of that committee. It's composed right across the board of all members, major party members on that committee as well. So I would suggest a third suggestion, in addition to my others, is that the terms of reference be consulted, the membership of that review again be consulted, and that the review itself be heard in public in the Foreign Affairs Select Committee and not the Security and Intelligence Committee. So we've made there have been some changes made, and some very good changes made to our intelligence services in terms of the oversight that we place on them. Certainly from what we understand, and being a former member of that Intelligence and Security Committee, the operational procedures within the SIS and the GCSB have improved. We've made some changes in the judicial overview, what I would call the second level of oversight, with the appointment of Cheryl Gwynne in the position of the Inspector General of Intelligence, and that power that she holds and says that she's free to wield is important as well. So the area that we don't have, where we are missing proper oversight, is in the area of our political oversight, and that comes to the actual composition and the functioning of the Intelligence and Security Committee itself. This review must take this responsibly and look critically at the way that this committee functions. It is unlike any other committee. It is unlike any other committee in one important way, and that is that the minister in charge of the SIS and the GCSB is also the chair of the committee that looks into the oversight of those departments. That is a direct conflict of interest. There is no other place in Parliament where that occurs. And if you compare the way that occurs in New Zealand with Australia, we find that the composition of the committee in Australia, the political composition, is made up of non-cabinet members. When you look at the composition of the committee in the United Kingdom, it is also made up of non-cabinet ministers. These are people who are very respected, have generally been in government and served their country, but they are no longer cabinet ministers, and therefore they no longer have the direct conflict of interest that our committee in New Zealand has. We have one of the most conflicted international security committees in the world. And if you take a look at Norway as a more contrasting example, they, sir, have no MPs on their Intelligence and Security Committee, and that committee provides the oversight. So I believe that we need to step carefully forward when we go into this review to make sure that we have a review that is robust and upholds the confidence of New Zealand. And I've made some suggestions about some of the practicalities on which that should be based. But I also, sir, believe that the Intelligence and Security Committee itself needs to be reformed, and that should be a major focus of the review coming up.
I'm calling up Mojo